Today we are making the secret fertilizer that every single gardener can make for basically free, and it is an absolutely amazing resource for your plants. What is that amazing secret fertilizer? It's compost tea. Let's go. The first thing you're going to need to make compost tea is water. So we're going to get some water from our pond here. And if it looks like blue Kool-Aid, that's because we dyed the water. It's totally safe to use with plants. We did that so we don't have as much algae growth. Basically just cuts down on the ability for the sunlight to enter the water and grow algae. So now we've got our water, we're gonna head over to our compost pile. Next, once we get some water in our buckets, we're gonna simply take some compost. Now, the reason why this works so well is because compost contains nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. It contains beneficial bacteria and fungi. It also contains trace minerals, tons of trace minerals from the breakdown and degradation process of organic material. And what I find so amazing is that compost tea is something that, regardless if you grow organically or inorganically, just conventionally, your plants can benefit from compost tea. And I find so many gardeners that they will talk about it, but they overcomplicate the process. I've seen tons of videos online that will get into things that you don't really have to do. I've been making compost tea now for going on probably 16, 17 years. When compost tea was just starting out, kind of becoming popularized on the internet, gardeners were talking about the benefits of it, and I started using it. And I noticed immense benefits. But I've also, since I've been at kind of the ground zero, the forefront of compost tea, I've seen it get overcomplicated over the years, and I've never really understood why it needs to be overcomplicated. In my opinion, compost tea is one of the simplest things you can do. So once you get some water in your buckets, you're gonna get some compost. And the next question a lot of people ask is, well, how much compost do I need? Honestly, I never really measure mine out. I just simply get some compost here, and I just throw in a good, I don't know, that's 3 scoops. Do I need more? I don't know. I never really measure. I just throw enough in to make sure that I feel confident that I'm gonna have the benefit. What is that benefit? Well, all of the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, trace minerals, beneficial bacteria and fungi, all the humic acids, all those great compounds, they're in this compost. And what you're essentially doing is you are absorbing the water-soluble nutrients. Not the water insoluble, but the water soluble. You see, your plants, when they're growing outside, you'll notice that over time, after many seasons of rain and winter weather and melting, you'll find that your nutrients get depleted over time. If you've got a beautiful compost pile, you'll notice that the grass around the edge of that compost pile gets super green. Well, why is that? It's from a process called leaching. Leaching is the process of rain or water carrying with it those water-soluble nutrients away from the compost and into the water. Where does it then go from there? Well, it seeps down into the soil or runs off, runs away. And so what we're doing is we're essentially leaching the nutrients from this compost, and we're essentially just expediting the process right into a bucket. It's so unbelievably simple. This is all I do to make compost tea. I add about 4, 5, 6 scoops or so. Like I said, it just depends on how I'm feeling that day. You can't overdo it. You can't mess up compost tea. Sure, you might not add enough compost and it might just be a little more diluted. But the great thing with compost tea is that you can use it every single time you water. If someone tells you otherwise, they're lying to you. Compost tea is something you can do even if you're already fertilizing your crops. We use Trifecta Plus on everything. Doesn't matter. We still use compost tea because compost tea is going to be a super fast acting, basically water soluble foliar feed and root drench for your plants. It's the best thing in the world for your plants. All I'm doing here is I'm just taking this metal rod here and I'm just stirring up the compost tea. I'm basically just suspending that compost in the water to help it absorb into the water. Essentially, within 5 to 10 minutes of adding the compost, anything that was water soluble will be absorbed into the water. And so that brings the next question up, which is, how long do you let it steep? So compost tea, it gets its name because you're steeping it in water. And I find that a lot of people, a lot of online gurus will say, steep it overnight, add a bubbler, add all this sugar and let it sit overnight to really foster the beneficial bacteria. Okay, so that is absolutely true, that the longer you wait and the more you aerate, the more beneficial bacteria can be colonized. It's not wrong. However, what we're doing here is we are getting the maximum benefit with the minimum amount of time. You see, I don't want to sit here and wait a whole day just to have this much more benefit, right? Because within 10 minutes, you've gotten this much benefit. After a full day, you might get this much more benefit. There's not that, it's, in my opinion, what one could kind of consider marginal. Now, obviously that can be argued, but I've been doing this for 16 years. I've never noticed a tremendous difference with my compost tea. That's just, it could be totally anecdotal. It could be that's my truth. Talk to someone that they steep theirs overnight. They might have a different truth. This is my truth. I keep it really, really simple. The science shows that as soon as you take water soluble nutrients within 5 to 10 minutes of adding water that is above 40 degrees, any water soluble nutrients will be absorbed into that compost or into that water from the compost. So that's really what I'm trying to get. I'm just trying to get those water soluble nutrients, and I'm just kind of agitating that to suspend the compost into the water so that we can have a foliar feed. Now, the next question you guys all ask, what about sugars like molasses? Or what about sugars to essentially help to boost the beneficial bacteria counts in my compost tea? The answer to that is you definitely can if you want. Again, you certainly can if you want. We have a product called Sassy Lass, and Sassy Lass is a powdered molasses mixed with a humic and fulvic acid that would be phenomenal to add to your compost tea if you want. But I find just adding it to water and watering my plants has the exact same benefit. And, adding it to your compost tea is not going to be immediate. So you're going to have to wait. Is it going to harm it to wait? No, it's just, you're not able to use it right away. And I like to make it, use it, and be done. I don't like to wait multiple days to use my compost tea. I just like to, like I said, I do things pretty quick and dirty around here, and I get great results. Now, the final question before we apply this onto our plants is, and I kind of already touched on this, can you ever do too much? Can you ever apply too much? The answer is no, you can't. You really can't. This is very, very gentle. I've applied 4 or 5 scoops of compost into this 5-gallon bucket of water here. 4 or 5 scoops of compost diluted down. You're never going to have too many nutrients to the point where it burns your plants. If you are using compost, like fully composted material, you're fine. You're absolutely fine. And the final thing before we apply this to our plants that you all ask is, Luke, what about using city water? I heard using city water is not great for making compost tea. And to that, there would be some truth to that. Now, if you are just looking to get the water-soluble nutrients, right? The nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, trace minerals, all those beneficial humic acids and stuff like that, using city water will not affect that one bit. However, if you want to take advantage of the beneficial bacteria and fungi found in this compost, and you want to leach that into the water and use that as a foliar feed with your plants, in that case, you'd probably want to let your water sit for about 24 hours. Chlorine and chloramine will leave your water from letting it sit. And because a lot of city water is treated with chlorine, and chlorine is intended to kill bacteria, the best thing to do would be to let it sit. You don't have to. You don't have to. There's nothing saying you have to. It's just there are some benefits with doing that. You don't have to hook it up to a bubbler. Some people say, well, hook it up to a fish bubbler for like a fish tank for 24 hours. Just letting it sit for 24 hours is more than fine. Just fill up some 5-gallon buckets, let it sit. And again, you're gonna get the biggest benefit from doing that if you're using city water, but it's not essential. You do not have to by any means. You're going to get a ton of benefits still. Even just city water, compost, 5 minutes, stir it up, water your plants, you're still going to get some tremendous benefits. Will it be the most benefit? No. But you're still, again, that's how much you're getting within using it right away. And this was city water. Benefit might be here. You know, you might get 75% of the total benefits from using city water and not letting it sit. And that's, again, I'm just throwing out random numbers that I think are probably close to accurate. So don't quote me on that, but I've lived in the city my whole life. I've made compost tea and used it right away. Have I noticed tremendous benefits? Not tremendous differences, I'll be honest, but I can safely say that killing off bacteria is not a great way to foster an organic garden. So I would probably let it sit if I had the time. All right, so now we got this stirred up here and in the water. It basically just looking like a really dark chocolate milk. We're gonna water some plants. Let's go. Okay, so now all we're going to do is we're just going to fill up our water can. Because this bucket was a little full, I'm grabbing this gallon jug just kind of so I don't spill a ton. But if you had a funnel, you could just dump it right into a water can like this. Or if you want to put it into a pump sprayer, the next thing you'll have to do, because there's a lot of sediment in here, there's a lot of floaties, a lot of stuff that's going to clog the sprayer up. You can absolutely dilute this down even further if you want. You could split this, 50% fresh water, 50% compost tea to dilute it even more. There's, again, no harmful effects from doing that. You're just diluting the benefit of what was there, again. But then you also can, and probably should, run it through a paint strainer. Paint strainers are really fine mesh. They're going to catch all of that sediment so that you can actually put it into a pump sprayer. Because if you don't, it absolutely is going to clog that sprayer up. And then the final thing that I'd recommend doing before even putting it through a paint strainer is probably letting it set for another probably 10 to 15 minutes to really let some of that sediment settle out in the bottom. You'll find in the very bottom, it's going to be tremendously thick, and you probably have a lot of sand and silt and other debris down there. And that's very normal. It's very difficult to put that into a sprayer. Because the two ways that you can, well, there's three ways you can apply this, but technically it's two different application forms. One is a root drench. So I'll show you a root drench, and it's pretty simple as the name would imply. We're just drenching the roots. And then the second is called a foliar feed. Now, foliar feed can be done. We can foliar feed like this, coming in close. Check it out. So foliar feed, we're just gonna take the compost tea, we're just gonna dump it right on the plants, just like that. So we're getting those leaves covered and all those water soluble nutrients right on the leaves. This can help prevent diseases. This can actually help to prevent pests. Believe it or not, we are essentially coating the leaves with a beneficial aerobic bacteria, beneficial fungi as well. And what that is doing is that is essentially helping to colonize the leaf surface with beneficial bacteria and fungi that can reduce the amount of space available on the leaf for the harmful bacteria and harmful fungi. So there have been many studies that have shown that using a foliar feed of compost tea can reduce issues like powdery mildew, blights like early blight, septoria blight, fusarium wilt. There's many studies that show that. And again, that's just creating a balance of good beneficial bacteria and fungi. And it's so cheap, it's so easy. Like, you don't have to do anything special to get these amazing benefits. And that's through a foliar feed. Now, a root drench is just the exact same. We're going to just simply, rather than water the leaves, because if it's raining a lot, if it's very damp, it's very cold, you don't want to water the foliage. You want to keep the foliage as dry as possible. Simply take your compost tea, drench the roots. And that's a root drench. And that means all those beneficial bacteria and fungi and nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, trace minerals, everything that's in that water is going to go right down into the soil, immediately be readily used by those roots right away. There's very little time that it takes for those roots to have to take things up. It just is right then and there, right in the water, right away. And you'll notice some incredible benefits from using compost tea. And so I don't think there's many more questions that people ask, but if you do have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments box down below. Like I said, I've been using compost tea now for going on probably 16 years of my gardening career, and I can safely say it is one of the best things for the garden because it is just so easy, it is so quick, it's so inexpensive, and anyone can do it. I guess the final thing to mention is I will predict people asking, well, what about worm castings? What about other types of compost? 100%. Use your worm castings. That becomes worm compost tea. All the same benefits, if not a few more benefits from additional, the gut flora, right? From the worm, you get additional beneficial bacteria, additional beneficial fungi. You get additional stuff from using worm castings, but it's not, again, it's not any different. Same exact process as this type of compost tea. So whether you're using fresh compost that you created using yard waste or composted down manures or anything that's fully composted, you can use. Tremendous benefits, super simple to do. If you have any more questions, feel free to post them in the comments box down below. I really do hope that you will try this on your garden, and I really do hope that it makes a huge difference. As always, this is Luke from the My Gardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. Take care. Bye.